Okay. Should be live now. If you can hear me, that would be ideal. We are here today to paint some Earthborne Rangers miniatures. And I have some of the non-official miniatures that I painted in the background watching us today. I'm going to be working on the Peerless Pathfinder here. I have changed a little bit of the setup, so I have two monitors now, so that I can see chat and stuff a little easier than before. I printed out and put onto a card a reference photo of the Peerless Pathfinder here. So this is kind of what I'm going to be looking at for some guidance. Let's check the Discords and stuff to see if anybody asked me a question. No. No. All right, so I think I will zoom in a little bit. How does that look? Be too close. That should be good. Sorry for the bouncing. Connection looks good, and if you hear some dripping, that's because it's sprinkling and raining outside, so you never know here if that's going to mess with the internet. We shall see. Okay, I think I'm just going to get started so we can get as far as possible. Put a little color on the face. And this one I'm going to use a contrast color. You see how it looks with the undercoating that I did on the face. It's looking a little lighter than usual. I think I'm already going to change my plan. I think I will use this as a wash. I'm going to sop up most of that with a dry brush. And we're going to put some regular acrylic flesh on there and then put a wash over it. So let's find... There we go. Let me check something here real quick. Okay. Let's look good. Homemade wet palette. Just need the teeniest, tiniest bit of flesh color. And of course, a whole bunch comes flying out because it was clogged. It's a little bit cold here too. That's why I'm wearing a sweater. I'm out in the garage. Well, I should probably put some flesh color on somebody else too, since I got so much of it out, unfortunately, on accident. So we'll lose a little bit of detail here briefly until the wash gets put back over it. We're not losing the detail, it's just not as easy to see, I guess. Probably a better way to say it. The detail is still there, it's not lost. Forever. Are we gonna say that's neck or hair? Or part of, no, we're gonna say it's part of their clothing, actually. Just a little bit of face. Everybody's wearing gloves. I want our shaper to have pale flesh also, and then we're going to go a little more tan. So the shaper is going to be interesting to paint here because normally I do like basing details at the end, but I really wanted to see how the floating rocks situation was going to work out, because if it wasn't going to work out, I wanted to be able to dismantle it and redo the basing without worrying about damaging a completed paint job. And it looks like everybody's wearing gloves. Let me check the art. No, there's no gloves in that art. Yes, definitely in that art and that art. Okay, so it looks like we can do a little bit more flesh painting. These miniatures are a little smaller, but they're not like extremely small. They're not like Seventh Continent small. Those are small. I really got to keep in mind the stuff on the base when I'm dealing with this guy here. All right. I'm just going to use up my paint. I don't want to waste it. Can always do multiple shades of the wash to give more tanned flesh tones. There's barely any here. We got gloves. That's it. Step one. Or step half, I guess. Now this is acrylic, so it's probably already dry. The first couple of colors I'm usually not worried about being too careful, unless I'm going to definitely use a transparent paint and I want to preserve the undercoating that I've done already. Like I said, this is very thin acrylic paint, so we're probably already good to put a wash on there. Let me know if the audio is good in the chat, just so I can know. The mic is on the arm where this camera is. The wet palette out of the way. Not going to take much of this either. We're not talking about huge areas. Now this should let us see some of the detail again. It settles into those recesses. So this is using a contrast paint, kind of like a wash, because it's a flesh colored contrast paint over a pale flesh acrylic color. As you can see the tonal difference based on what's on the face and that hand, that arm. Oh, I wonder if it almost looks like that sleeve goes all the way forward. I think the sleeve does, so we'll just paint the hand and we'll repaint the sleeve when it comes time to do the robe. It's not really a robe. That was like the first thing that came to mind because of the wizard-like status of the shapers. Fingers coming back into view. not a whole lot of flesh showing there on the, was that the Exceptional Tinkerer? All right. So I think we're going to start with some kind of tan color. I'm not going to necessarily be entirely married to the art from the card, but I think we'll start with like a tan for this. You usually want to start with things that are lower in to the model, if that makes any sense. So we'll work on a tan. A tannish color. And I think we'll probably go acrylic with that one too. And we'll go real white or real light color with the sleeves. We got a lot of bits and bobs we can detail up on the back here. That'll be fun when we get back there. So we don't want to go too light because we want a nice color for the backpack and be able to distinguish all of that stuff. Probably use Rhinox hide for the gloves and the boots. What do we do with the trim? He's got a lot of blue trim in this art. We'll see how that looks. So we need like a tan. Hello, Doug. Yes, I did back the current one. So these minis, I believe, are all the set one on the current GameFound campaign, and then there's 3 other sets that they don't have the renders for yet. And just to be clear, all of the basing work that you see here is my own basing work. They come with just little on their own little round pewter bases. But I really wanted to enhance like the cinematic aspect of it, so I like doing basing work, obviously. What is this? It's bone white, so we could probably use with a wash on it. Or we could just go Skeleton Horde. Let's try that. I don't have a whole lot of this left. Ooh, Gorgrunt of fur might be nice for the middle apron part here, which would then be the back. And we could do a light tan for the backpack. Stuff. How much of this do I even have left? Oh, there's enough for this. This stupid pot doesn't want to stay open ever, though. Now we gotta try our best not to spill it. And I shouldn't say stuff like that out loud. Because that's when things happen. This might not be dark enough. But we do kind of want the contrast between this and the darker, like, cape and this apron thing. I don't know what that thing's really called. This will probably end up being fine because it'll contrast nicely, I guess. Especially if we let it dry and then come back to it. To make it darker. I really like the game, Doug, and I'm so hyped for what they're doing with the new stuff. I enjoy everything about this game. Oh, that sleeve is supposed to be white, not this color. Or off-white-ish. Off-white-ish. We'll come back and do that belt a different color later. There's some pouches and stuff in there too. That'll be fine. We're going to cover that glove up with Rhinox hide. So that'll be fine. Just put a little bit of this sleeve here. Some of that is the cape that'll get covered up. I want to make sure I get all of this little part here. So, I mean, this is also maybe a tip or a trick or something that if you're using transparent paints like contrast paints or speed paints from Army Painter, if you want to make it darker, just go back over it again. You do want to make sure that it's dry, though. I'm probably going a little too fast because you can, if it's not completely dry, you could pull it around and then you'll get little weird, excuse me, coffee stain parts, they call it. This is the part that I wanted to make part of his outfit. His outfit? Yes, I think. Their outfit. Let's do that. Like it's the shirt is covering the neck. You know, it's smart to try to prevent sunburn. Have a little something covering your neck. All right. The only thing that will be interesting is the blue. So we'll see. I don't know how the blue and the brown are going to look together. What was I gonna do? Oh, Gore Granta Fur. I like this. I like this contrast paint color. Maybe I'll do some kind of gray instead of blue. I actually have some interesting blue-gray colors. They are cool, and if you want to talk about minis not necessary for the game, while I was waiting for the game, I painted all these back here. These are like the companion cards. They don't serve any purpose whatsoever, other than they're just table decoration. Like for the shepherd background, we got Oru, Pakodo, and Riri. This is the little, well, this might be spoiler, but there's a raccoon you can run across, and then there's some enemies back there. I did those while I was waiting for the game to show up. It's not like I didn't have 800 other things that I could have been painting. Oh, and the sad thing is that might not be an exaggeration on that number. That makes you think. So we're kind of using a combination of painting techniques. One of them being one that's been popularized to be known as a slap chop, but people have been using that particular method long before it was called slap chop. Just undercoating and then using thin layers of paint on top of the undercoating. It's kind of interesting how giving something I don't know, unique name or funny name that's been around for a while can help expose it to more people, I guess, or something. Sorry, that was out of the view. I had to get into a weird little spot there. And we've already used some regular acrylic paint with a wash just on the face, which we'll use more of in other parts. Looks like we got some rope back here. And bust out some yellows, yellowish browns. All right. Again, I'm not being super careful right now. I can always go back and fix mistakes at this point. Use some oopsie paint, as Barrett would say. All right, now we got to get into an interesting little spot back here. All right, I think that came out all right. What do I want to do for the pants? Green? Is that a thing? I mean, obviously it's a thing, but is that going to be a good thing? Is that going to be an interesting thing? Does more of that shoulder need to be covered, or is that more of that strap? It's like part of the strap. All right, it's a good start. There's all kinds of little pieces of tech on this thing back here. I almost wonder if I should just do... Well, no, because the boots are going to be Rhinox hide. Let me see what kind of blue things I can come up with. Or gray things. So what I'm looking at... You look at this art on the card. This is kind of like a blue. It's almost like a blue jean blue. I have something. Dark blue gray, is that the one? Or is it green? Oopsie. This is dark shadow gray. That's too dark though. Try this blue on the pants maybe. Yeah, the artwork is cool, especially if you really take a look at it. There's different styles of art for the different kind of cards. So like the moments have a style, the attachments have their own style. Like the attachment on the card is I think the only thing that's in color or colored in, and everything else is a sketch. If you look at the different kinds of cards, they all have their own kind of style. Sorry for the coughing, but I'm still still recovering from the sickness. Maybe I'll go with the original idea of camo green for the pants, but militarum green contrast. Creed camo. I want to color the pants in first before I do this trim. There's also a little bit of that trim color, like on the glasses. And the hat thing is a similar color as the sleeves. So we're going to do like an ivory or a bright warm gray or something on the sleeves and the hat. And then probably wash it. take a look at what this color looks like. We can test that on a napkin. We need a bigger brush. Let's compare that. This one needs to be shaken a lot. Some Militarum green. Excuse me. So when you can see all of that stuff in the bottom, means it needs to be shaken. Those are the things that make the contrast paint do what the contrast paint wants to do. I feel like this one better for this situation. I was playing with fire there, leaving a pot open while I was shaking another one. Ooh, ooh. We have a lot on the brush there. They're very rangery colors, right? Brown and green. Get some Rhinox hide for the boots and the gloves. I don't hate it. Just got to see it with the trim next to it now. The style that I use for painting is a mix of contrast paints and regular acrylics. Like what I'm about to use is a non-contrast paint. So I'm gonna let this down. I'm gonna let this contrast paint down here dry. But now I'm gonna use a regular acrylic color for the next thing that I'm gonna do. So now I'm going to paint the sleeves here and the cap with this ivory color, and then put a wash on it. I use a mix, and there's no real rhyme or reason. It just depends on what color I want to do. And admittedly, I'm doing some of the contrast here because it's just faster. Like I could spend a whole bunch of time putting down a base coat and then a layer and then a highlight. And I might highlight some things. Like we'll spend a little bit of time doing the details on the back here. I really don't like the coverage that you get with a lot of the like the grays and stuff in the contrast line. So usually if I'm doing a gray or whatever, I'll use a regular acrylic. Like this rock right here. This is regular acrylic, and this dirt is all regular acrylic. The only reason those are painted right now is because when I was doing I wanted to test out this floating rock situation on this base, and I had a little bit too much brown and gray out, and I was like, well, I might as well just paint the rock now. And the dirt now while I got the paint out. We'll put some wash on that when we get the wash out, just so that can have time to dry. So now we're going in with a regular acrylic. So we'll lose, I shouldn't keep saying lose. We'll be covering up the detail that we got from the undercoating. Like now you can no longer see the wrinkles in the sleeve, but that'll come back when we put the wash and stuff on. How big is the glove? Yeah, the glove goes all the way down there. Okay. So I could use some, I could also use some Army Painter Speed Paints. It's another transparent paint line. And I have my Duncan Rhodes acrylics here too. That I could dip into if I need to find another color. I might actually do the Rhinox hide too, so that I can just wash all of it at the same time for the gloves. The Rhinox hide for the gloves. All right, now a very narrow path to get in here for that sleeve. The rest of that is all that tunic thing. And this helmet. It's not really a helmet. It's kind of like a cloth thing, maybe? Cloth hat. The goggles are going to end up being painted differently. How are you liking the two thin coats? I've only used a couple of them so far. It's interesting, like the board gaming hobby in itself can be a rabbit hole of stuff to buy, but then if you get into miniature painting, and man, don't even get me started on, which I haven't actually, but for that reason is, like if you do 3D printing too, forget about it. It's like, no way, I don't have enough time to even do this stuff. I don't want to dive down the rabbit hole of 3D printing. Okay, we're going to clean up this later when we paint the strap for the goggles. Yeah, they seem nice. I mean, obviously people can do anything for commercial reasons, but you would expect Duncan Rhodes, if he was going to put his name on a product, for it to be a good product. Hey Chubb, what's going on? You don't even know, Chub Frog, like how like I haven't played a single game since right before Thanksgiving, I don't think. All right, where is my Rhinox hide? Right here. I guess we could work on the base since we're going to have the washout. Yeah, we can kill some time. Not kill some time, we can be efficient with time. There you go. Have things drying all at the same time. All right. I really like this Rhinox hide color. I use it a lot for like boots and stuff. So we're gonna make our gloves match our boots. Like it's made from the same leather. What leather would it be? Sitka buck skin, maybe? Oh, yeah. I haven't started my search yet, but uh, the I'm glad they did the raccoon. Well, this is technically the kleptomaniac raccoon. There's no reason why it can't serve two purposes. I haven't had a chance to message them yet, but I was going to message Davi and Andrew and say thanks, guys, for making a card that would go along with one of the miniatures I painted. I really appreciate you thinking of me. I'm gonna wait till a little later in the game found campaign though, because I know they're like super busy. I think they're recording today, aren't they? Futuristic cow, yeah, for the leather, you mean? Yeah, I saw that in the art too. I was looking at the art and I was like, oh yeah, there's like, I see gear, I see some tech stuff hanging around here. So the only thing, the only small thing is like, I think in both of the pictures, the raccoons are kind of like a reddish brown raccoon instead of a a normal gray and black raccoon. I painted mine normal gray and black, but whatever. I think it looks cool. It has the most innocent looking face. Like who, me? I didn't touch it. I didn't take it. Yeah, I don't actually think these gloves need a wash. This Rhinox hide, it looks fine like this. I don't think a wash is going to enhance it at all. But when we get a wash and see some details on that cap, that'll be... They're in an extra long podcast session right now. Yeah, I think so. I thought I remember. Oh, I think Andrew Fisher was replying to one of your messages earlier when he said that he was working on the show notes for recording. Oh, that's right. That was when you were messing with Davi and like asking him to rate Andrew Fisher. I guess I should just say Fisher. Makes it easier for conversation's sake. All right. But they know you're just messing with them. I can't wait to hear how some of the new mechanics and stuff are going to work. You guys were beasts yesterday, like figuring out what all the stuff said, all the cards. I've been busy at work too, so I keep lurking in Discord and coming back and trying to catch up. But as we can imagine, because of what's the campaign going on and stuff, there was lots of chatter to go through, so I couldn't read all of it. You know what? Before it dries, I'm also going to do the wrap on the staff in this white color or ivory color. All right. I had to concentrate for a second there. And another one. So you're not using, let's see, I think I forgot illumination and powered, but I'm still stumped on spirit speaker mechanics. Yeah. Well, I think, have we seen any of the spirit cards or anything yet? Maybe we need to see the spirit cards. We need to understand what does speaking to a spirit actually mean, right? So what I think I want to do before I break the wash out is I have a brown color that I like to use that I'm almost out of. Just need a little tiny bit of it. That I want to use on the staff, and then we'll wash it to get the detail back. I know I keep talking about a lot of the same techniques over and over, but you never know if people have just come on or dropped off or whatever. Didn't necessarily hear the plans earlier. Okay. Did I bump them? I did. I need to go back and hang on. Got a little bit of that brown on the strap right there. After it gets the wash, you probably never would have noticed. I would know, though. I would know. It's funny about miniature painting. Like, I've painted miniatures before and looked at it and be like, that's decent job. And then, like, you take a photograph of it to post somewhere and you're like, how did I miss that? How did my eyeballs never see that mistake? And then it's like right there in the middle of the picture. This might look like it's going on thick, but it's actually pretty thin. And again, we'll see all this detail again once the wash gets on there and starts doing its thing, pooling where it needs to pool. You probably can't see that. I'm using a super tiny, like, old brush too. This brush is starting to fray. I'm not using anything super expensive or anything right now. So that brown will be on the wet palette, and we can use that later for some of these pouches and stuff too. We might probably go with a light tan color for the backpack just so that it contrasts. And then we can color the pouch a different color. There's like a little, what looks like we'll make it look like a technology thing anyways, right there. This pouch back here, this rope, little maybe boundary sensor or trail marker right here. We're going to paint this gray like it's a piece of tech up here, and there's some sticks inside of it looks like a quiver right there. I was going to do that blue jean gray, but now I almost just, maybe I want to do a lighter gray for the trim. I think I'll save the trim and just see how the rest of the miniature looks after it gets the wash on it. So let's do some bulk, not really bulk, but large area painting here on the base so we can put the wash down. So I want a lighter gray for the rocks. Maybe I could use this London, that seems fine. And then I have a earth. Where's my earth? Maybe, do I want to use cold gray? Get the dirt painted. We're going to be super quick and sloppy with this with a bigger brush. Right up until we get right around the boot that we've already painted. And I'm not worried about the trim or the rocks. Because we'll do the rocks second. And then when the wash goes on, it's going to help with like the transition from the dirt to the rocks. All this dirt on here. Just be a little careful around the feet. Then we want to give the wash some time to dry because we'll probably dry brush to bring some detail out on the rocks and the dirt. This brush is really like a workhorse brush. Like this one, I can just be rough. Like I almost want it not to have a point for what I use it for, like to get in all these little crevices and stuff on the basings. This stuff's probably going to need a little bit of time to dry when you're putting it into these crevices and stuff. It's not going on like a super thin coat like it might up on other parts of the model. The way I'm being aggressive and slapping it around. Going to a smaller brush around the feetsies. That's going to be gray as a rock. See, like that back there, that's a lot of paint that I just put back in there. That stuff's all gonna be rocks also. Let me get some of this paint. And it might look a little bright now, but it's definitely going to get... There's two things that happen. So it'll dry down, which means that like acrylic paint does what's called drying down, which means that it gets a little bit darker as it dries. Not like craziness, but it can get darker as it dries. But then we're going to put a wash on it too, which will definitely darken it. All right, let's get our gray. And it's going to take a while for the wash to dry because sometimes with the rocks and things, I get it pretty aggressive with the wash. So it can get into the cracks and the crevices and things. See you later, Chub Frog. I'm just sitting here thinking, like, I might use Apothecary White on the sleeves to wash it instead of Agrax Earthshade. Some of these Vallejo droppers I've had forever. Some of them are starting to show their age too. That might not have been enough gray. It might be. We'll see. Stretch it. It don't actually need like perfect coverage either because some variation is fine. That's why we do the undercoating. It's kind of funny how it looks before you get the wash on. It's like it looked so pretty before. What are you doing? But after you get the wash and maybe a dry brush on the rocks, it'll look good again. Like this is the same technique that for this rock here. It's not really best lighting, and Umbra's got some big wings blocking the light there. All right. Like I'm going to leave those dark holes back there. That's fine. That is fine. We'll use some of this gray on these rocks here. The rock there, this rock there, there. These other pieces of texture. So now we've got some little rocks along with our boulders. All right. Just turning it around. saw that part. Let's do this part right here too. This looks it's part of this boulder. Some little rocks right there. So you'll let that dry a little bit before we put the wash on it. Take some water. Really want to find a nice like light gray blue equivalent. Oh, hang on, here we go. Fenricum gray. With maybe a little bit more blue added. Let's see what happens. Let's try to make some magic happen. This might be blue enough. I'm going to add just the slightest touch, though, to some and see what happens. A very light, like electric blue. Guess I could look in my Dunkin' stuff too. The stone green, too dark. Not really popping out at me. Gravestone green. Both gray. Looks a little too dark. I want to put a thing up on the wall so I can see those colors without needing to take a bunch of them out at the same time. Never enough space. Never enough time is the real problem, I guess. All right. How's that looking? It's interesting. Might be too blue. But it might be exactly. No, it's not exactly. Let's mix a little of this other gray that we just used for the stone into it. Interesting. Let's get a really tiny brush. Concentrate here for a second. Can you even tell? Maybe not. But it's like the strap is the same color. It'll probably be more apparent on the bigger part of the trim down here. And then wash it with what? Apothecary white? Uh-oh. Or wolf gray or something. We're gonna need to see that. We're gonna need to be able to see that texture for this to look interesting, instead of just like a more blue than gray line. It's a very weird way to say it. Oh man, I keep getting up onto the tan, but at least I can soak it back up. We gotta get this tiny bit of strap. Oh, I should have. Oh, darn it. I should have washed the helmet first before I did this. A cloth headpiece or whatever it is. But I guess if I'm using apothecary white to wash it, it'll be fine. It'll all be fine. I think I need to get a little bit more on that point above the face for it to look right. A little bit more of the white. It looks a little too much like forehead right now. Just blocking in some stuff. Features, some details, however you want to say it. I think this part should be the same color as the trim. All right. Put the lid on this. Preserve that color. And out. Wow. Where it is. Excuse me. That stuff all looks dry, so maybe we'll do the wash first on the stuff that's going to get the ag grass earthshade real quick so it can start drying. All right. There we go. Wouldn't be a painting session if you didn't get some paint everywhere. Hey, Andrew. We're working on the Peerless Pathfinder. We're about to put a wash on the base to bring some of the details back out on these rocks and the dirt and stuff, so it can have some time to dry while we work on some other stuff. And this is going on fairly thick because this current formula that Games Workshop uses for this particular wash, it will do some setting, some moving around after you put it on. So did you guys finish your epic recording session? And just like that, we've got, it's still shiny because it's not dry, but we've got a bunch of detail coming through. You had to stop after 2 hours? Wow. I was going to put it in the Discord, but now that you're here, I was going to tell you and Davi, I painted this raccoon, this kleptomaniac raccoon, just because I thought it was a cute card. And it was so nice of you guys, just for me, because I already have a companion mini, to make a card in the expansion. That That hits me right in the heart, Andrew. Thanks so much. Because I know you guys did it just so that I would have a companion to go with the miniature that I painted. Thanks. Breaking news, everybody. Oh, I shouldn't have closed that. I need to wash the staff and stuff. There's a lot of detail on these miniatures. These are nice, Andrew. A plus to the sculptor. And now you can get a 360. So for those who don't know, and why would you? Because I had done some preliminary basing work on all of these guys, and I had put some photos up. And just jokingly, I know he was joking, but Andrew put in the Discord where the pictures were, what, no floating rocks for the shaper? And I was like, oh man, that would be such a cool idea. I'd never done anything floating on a miniature before. Uh, so I was like, okay, that sounds awesome. I need to figure out how to do this. So normally I don't do all this basing detail before I paint a miniature because it is going to be a little bit in the way, but I wanted to see how it would come out, and I think it's awesome. I think it looks cool. I mean, yeah, you can still see the plexi that I had to make to uh, have the rocks floating, but I mean, from like far away, it looks good. It's gonna actually, I think, get enhanced too when the Ranger gets some color on it behind it, because there'll be some background there more than just the primed shaper. But that's cool. So thanks for the inspiration. All right, let's put a wash on staff so we can see all the cool details. Again, on the staff and on the wrap here. It's going to be sweet to see when the sculptors have time to start working on the renders for the new miniatures. All right. So there we go. Now we got our detail back on our wrap and our staff instead of just the flat base color that was put down. Oh, you know what? I have something also here that you'll probably appreciate, Andrew, that I've been working on in my semi-spare time. While that wash dries for a second. I'll zoom the camera out here a little bit. So I wanted to make a specialized base for this guy. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, thanks, Fisher. So you did floating stones for... Oh, it's Tyranid army. Yeah, so these... funny story. I don't know if it's a funny story, but there's no acrylic that's that thin. So I got the thinnest acrylic that I could find. And I apologize for buying plastic, guys. I guess that's against the spirit of the game, but I bought a tiny little bit of plastic to make this work. And then using a respirator and having the door open and ventilation and stuff, I held it over a candle and had to stretch it out as thin as possible. the sticks so that it would get that thin. But I've been using recycled sleeves, I promise, and all these other bases, and this stuff is like, this is bark and sand that I get from doing panning for when I do gold mining and stuff. Everything else is recycled, I swear. Anyways, while that dries, I was going to show you this. So this is a base that I was working on for my Dragon King from KDM. So he sits on here with his thumb on this rock and his other hand on this rock. So he's kind of looking down instead of just standing up like this. He's kind of looking down at the folks. And I built in some faces and stuff into the base. So this is going to be fun. Finally get to work a little bit more on him. But we're here to do this today. This is a Earthborne Rangers stream. What do you think of that blue? I was trying to get, I don't know if you guys can see it very well. It's like a blue-gray. I really like this art, the coloring on this card. This kind of like blue trim around, so I'm trying to go for that type of feel on the trim there. This is going to be fun, all the detail in the backpack. But let's get the Apothecary White going here. And once this wash down here dries, we can dry brush it to bring some more detail out. This was one of my fun finds, was the this miniature that I'm using for Quiet. And then I found this one. This is a D&D miniature for Old Bloody Clicker. And then obviously Umbra back there. Lots more cards to find minis for, sounds like. Sorry about the shaking. Had to zoom back in. There we go. Let's see what Apothecary White does. It's a contrast color that it's called white, but it really ends up just graying the crevices, cracks and stuff, the texture. We'll use it on the sleeve and see what happens. It's not going to be a whole lot, but it's going to do something just so that it's not a solid white anymore. These are like from all over the place. Like the Oru dog here was from a war dog set. And he originally was wearing armor over his entire body. But I used some green stuff and covered up the armor on the front here. And textured it to look like fur so that he was wearing less armor. Because I wanted it to be more white. And then... But I thought that the tail and the face and stuff was perfect from this dog miniature for Oru. And he had just enough stuff on the side. So he's got what looks like maybe a conduit or something there. This one has to be my favorite. I don't know if you were here earlier though, Fisher. My Kleptic Raccoon. He's got some boots. He's got a hiking staff there. Adaptable multi-tool back here. Like a boundary sensor here. The pouch over there, the belt pouch. All the stuff that he's stolen, and he's got this little, like, who, me, look on his face. It's my favorite. That's my favorite. Let's see what this looks like. Trying to get some color into the cracks on this. That's a lot. That is not adding any color at all. Have to figure out a different color to wash on the trim. So we got some definition back in the, if the light will show it correctly. There we go. We got some definition back in the wrinkles in the sleeve. All right, I can understand after a 2-hour power session of recording, I can totally understand getting off your computer. Have a great night. Chat with you guys later on the Discord. Or you guys, Andrew Navarro. See how far I actually get with this one today. We still got some details we can add in the belts and stuff here too. What can I wash that blue-gray with? Maybe one of these other grays. Let's try this one. I have to go super thin, and maybe I'll just try to target the cracks or the little. Let's go with a smaller brush. Or was that? Oh, that's already the 3. Okay, we're already at the small brush. Let's get some actual paint on the brush. Even going to show up. There we go. A little bit. Just go over the whole thing so that it gets down into those lines. You can see some definition again. So the difference between the right side and the left side. Washed, not washed. Okay, let's put this on the goggles. We definitely want to be able to see the lenses on the goggles. Yeah, so the interesting thing here is this isn't technically a wash that I'm using. I'm using contrast paint to act like a wash. So it's got a little, I mean, I'm not a scientist or anything, but I play one on YouTube apparently for what I'm about to say. Uh, I'm pretty sure that there's additives. At least I've heard before that there's additives in the contrast paints that make it move around a little bit more. And I should say a little bit more than the old formulas that Games Workshop used to use, because they have changed their formulas that they use for the things that actually are labeled washes to behave more like contrast paints do. And I have heard from more believable sources than myself that they've added things into the washes so that they behave more like the contrast paints do. And you can tell the difference in the formulas from the bottles. So here's old formula, Nuln Oil. So they even changed the bottle size when they changed the formula. Old formula, new formula. These act more like contrast paints in the way they move and they look and stuff. But I'm a big proponent of using transparent paints like washes. Because it's the same concept. You put a base coat down or an undercoat, and whatever the tone of the undercoat is, or the shade or whatever, I don't have an art degree or anything either. But when you put another tone over it, or another color over it that's real thin, it plays with the underneath color, sometimes nicely. All right, how do our goggles look? Is it better without my hand? Never know how this is an iPhone, an old iPhone that I'm using as a camera. You never know how it's going to behave. You can see those lenses. Yeah. It's definitely a new formula. And some people hate it. Like there was nothing wrong with Nuln Oil. Nuln Oil was like a staple in the hobby, and a lot of people didn't think it needed to change. Let's do some backpack. The wash on the base is pretty dry. It's not completely dry yet though, so we can't quite do a dry brush on it. What about some khaki? Break out the old homemade wet palette. Might go back to the Rhinox hide for a couple of those pouches. We'll add some tacky looking stuff. I might use like a, well, what should we do for the rope? This will be our rope. Nazi Desert. Talon Sand. No, we use the desert. Maybe we use this Talon Sand for the quiver. Just so we have some different colors that make things look interesting on the back there. I'm going to add a couple of lights, I think, or some things that make it look like there's a little bit of technology back there. Excuse me. This will get a wash on it too, since we're going back to adding a fully acrylic paint here. And what I mean by that is not a contrast paint. So I'm not worried about being sloppy here either, because there's other details here that are going to get painted after this. Just going to be careful when I get to the parts that should already be done, like the cape and stuff. But like if I get a little bit on the rope, I'm not too worried. Oh man, there's like a spot way back in there, but I'm not going to worry about it. Those are the little parts of the model where you got to just be like, oh man, no one is ever going to see that. Right? But like I said earlier, I'm going to know. It'll get covered when this gets washed. That's what I'm going to say. I'm sticking to it. So we'll make that panel gray. Like it's a piece of metal. Color that pouch something else. So this is where you just have to like have some experience with your paints and your colors, and just like know like, oh man, this backpack looks so bright right now, but to get that wash on there, it is not going to be this bright anymore. So we got a rope and another little thing here. What is that? Is that a canteen? Is that an infusion canteen maybe? No, it's not round like the infusion canteen. It looks like a it looks like a flask actually. No. It's our Peerless Pathfinder got a little still somewhere in the valley. That would be hilarious. Not even trying to hide his flask. It's right there in his backpack. We should paint the belt. I'm going to do the belt this too, just so we get a little more bright color next to the Gorgrunta fur on the cape and stuff here. So amazingly, it looks like that. That's all the backpack stuff there. Let's color in some more, block in some more colors. Some more desert for the rope. Holy cow. Get this out of the way. Just realized this is the 2-size brush. I should have been using the 3. Slightly smaller. Got some rope. I don't know, have you seen this new trend in the hobby, Fisher? The using a poppet for a palette. So you put the paint in the little well, and then when it comes time to clean it, you can and pop it out like that, and it helps separate the dried paint. That's the new trend. All the cooler people than me came up with. I'm gonna paint these sticks this misty brown. None of these details are huge. Yeah, it's like perfect little wells in these poppet things. I mean, my kids have so many of these things around the house. Excuse me, sorry. It's better if you can get a white one, because then if you get a dark one, it can be hard to see the paint that's in there. This one obviously is not white, it's yellow, but and when the trend, this is actually kind of funny. When people started catching on to it, there was a soccer ball one like that was on Amazon, and it looked like a soccer ball on one side, but the back side was all white because it was only printed like a soccer ball on one side, and it sold out. It sold out for a while. I don't know if it's even back in stock, but I was like, well, this is a strange coincidence that I can't remember what podcast or stream or whatever in the painting world I saw it on, but it was like, is there really that many people that hopped on this bandwagon that fast that bought out all of these soccer ball poppets off of Amazon? Apparently, who knows? Maybe they only had like 5 in stock, but I just thought it was funny. What was I gonna do? Oh yeah, paint the sticks. It's brown. None of these details are going to take a long time because there's not a lot here for each individual one. Can hear the dripping on my garage door again. It must be raining again. Must be raining. That means in about 2 or 3 days it might be snowing on you guys. In Minnesota. Yeah. So do you use a dry palette? Instead of a wet palette? How do I want to contrast the... If I go with the Rhinox hide again for the quiver for those sticks. Let's see how this looks on this pouch. That was too much. Yeah. I like using it, I like using a wet palette for, especially when I'm mixing colors. So, because like this blue gray thing that I've got on the trim here was a mixed color. And in case I need it later, it helps preserve it instead of it drying out. And I don't even have a professional wet palette. I mean, this is my homemade wet palette. It's a piece of Tupperware with paper towel on the bottom and then parchment paper on top of the paper towel. And then there's a lid that I can put on it. Works perfectly fine. Yeah, that can be a problem. Mold in your wet pellet. I have definitely had mold in my wet pellet before. Um, let's do Rhinox hide for these other things. What is that thing? Do you know what that thing is right there next to the rope? The one I said looks like a flask. It really does. It looks like a canteen, but maybe just not an infusion canteen, I guess, right? Because those are round in the art, and that thing up there looks like a boundary sensor, kind of. Anyway, let's get going on some of these here. It looks just like a regular canteen. I like my story of it being a flask, though. We're not going to get crazy with doing all kinds of layering and highlights and stuff with any of these. That transition will fill in when the wash gets put on there. Not really a transition, the edge, I guess. All right. Starting to see some different details. Let's work on that panel. Get some grays and some colors out. We need some different grays for these other techie looking things too. These sculpts are nice, especially for pewter. Sometimes you can metal miniatures are fine with details, but it's amazing what they can do with some of the newer plastics. I mean, here we go talking about plastics on an Earthborne painting stream, but like some of the stuff that Awakened Realms is doing, and clearly all the stuff that like Kingdom Death Monster does is phenomenal. It just takes them 20 years to do it. And you got to put it together. Like the Awakened Realms stuff you get is already built when you get it. We want to use a darker gray for. We'll see how things look after the wash gets put on and dries. Yeah, me too. Like the stuff that you would see from like who was it, Rel Partha and stuff for D&D in the 90s. That was all like pewter. It served its purpose, but miniature sculpting has come a long way since then. I think Rel Partha was one of the companies. Obviously, there was other people making it, but I remember the first time I went into a true game store in Southern California with my friend and his dad. I was I was shocked the massive wall of miniatures that they had. It was 30 years ago at this point. Holy cow. That's hard to say out loud that it was that long ago. All right. We put a wash on that, and then we'll add some detail to this, like maybe a red light and a blue light, like this is a piece of technology or a little scanner or some kind of device. Maybe something to whatever's on top of the backpack there. But just so that we got some contrasting items back here that add some interesting different things to look at. And it'll be even more interesting once we wash it. Step away for just a second, away from the microphone. Still recovering a little bit. Rough winter. Rough winter. So what did I do? Here it is. So sick with different things. I haven't had a chance to play anything since November. And we're starting to get busy with tax season again already. I can't believe it. It's that time of year. This new formula, it even looks like a little glossy at first too. It's like it's so different. There were people outraged when they announced that they were changing this formula, and there were other people who went and bought out all the old formula that their local shops had just so they could make it last as long as possible. Humans are afraid of change, I guess. Don't move my cheese. That's a weird saying. All right. I gotta let that dry. This is kind of pooling a little bit here. Pick it up. Pick some of it up. never know how the lighting in this camera is going to behave. Like, is it better with the hand or without the hand? All right. I think maybe we'll dry brush the base. Wait for that top part to dry. Not the top part, the backpack, so I can add some more little tiny details and things. We can maybe even do some fun basing stuff while that dries. Make it look pretty. Okay, let's do some dry brushing. Let's talk about a tip, a dry brushing tip. I need some cardboard. Grab some cardboard. Even though it's called dry brushing, a tiny bit of moisture is still okay. You don't want it completely dry, because if you completely dry out your paint, it's going to look dusty. You don't want it to look dusty. So the way we accomplish that... Oh, here's tip number 1 too. The best dry brushes on the planet are makeup brushes. This is a makeup brush that someone might use to put makeup on their face. I've got all kinds of makeup brushes. Here's a massive one that I use for bigger projects. So makeup brushes, tip number 1. Here's another one. Which one I want to use? Probably this round tip one. Anyways, what I was talking about is a lot of people, when they learn to dry brush, put paint on their brush and dry it out, or get it off their brush on paper towel like this. That can lead to it getting a little too dry. So strangely enough, I have found that doing it on cardboard is a tiny bit better. Tiny bit better. Let's start with a little bit of the brown, maybe. And you can also test it on your thumb. This isn't light enough. I need something lighter. About Earthborne. I just kind of went everywhere. Excuse me, sorry. And I actually want to save this makeup brush now for the gray. So I'm going to switch to a different, smaller, actual non-makeup brush, dry brush. That's kind of small, just so I can get into some smaller areas here with the dirt. Just want to add a little bit of highlighting to the dirt. This is going to look a little light, but it'll dry down a little darker too. And we're not going to go too crazy with it. I don't even know if on this camera you can even tell. Maybe on the backside there. And especially when we get some green bushes and whatnot on there, it'll look even better. All right. Let's get gray out for these bigger rocks. We'll go a step up in lightness. We'll go to cold gray. Tiny bit. I'm just actually just going to put it right here on this cardboard. Not enough. There we go. We don't want to hit it too hard. Cover up all of our work we did with the wash and stuff, but it just looks a little bit better when the edges get hit. With some gray highlighting. Just a little. Sorry, excuse me, geez. Yeah, that needs a little bit more time to dry on the top. So let's put some green. Oh, you know what? I should do what I usually like to call the victory lap, because it's the last thing that I do, but it's not going to be the last thing that I do, and that's fine. The lap with the black around the base on the bottom. It's just to clean up all this extra stuff. But I want to do it now just so I don't get it on any of the bushes and stuff that get put on the base there. This is a Pro Acryl black. It's the one I use for the rim of all of my minis. Whoopsie. Sorry. And we can go with a big brush here. It usually takes 2 laps around to make sure that everything is covered, because it can be a little thin in some spots. Got a little bit of our dirt sticking down over there, but that's fine. Already looks pretty sweet. Oh, I forgot to wash that belt on the front. I usually have. That's a good question, Andrew. I have a love-hate relationship with uh, putting varnish on minis. And sometimes I even wonder how much it's necessary, especially if it's for things like Warhammer, like for your Tyranids. I would definitely put something on it just because of the wear and tear that they get. I didn't coat any of this stuff. None of these guys back here. I probably won't coat these things. I just don't think they're going to see enough handling for it to be necessary. Now, having said that, there are some times when I like to use... so, like, I'm working on a Shadows of Brimstone thing, and I wanted to learn to do a marble texture. So this is a base that I did trying to learn how to do marble texture to make it look like marble squares. And I put a gloss varnish on this because I wanted it to have that shiny marble look on it. Like for my Darth Vader guy from why is it escaping me now? What is the name of the Imperial Assault? Is that the FFG game? Like for Darth Vader and my stormtroopers and stuff, I put a gloss varnish on the helmet and the armor so that it would shine. And I say I have a love-hate relationship with it because I used to use dull coat cans, and that stuff can be so temperamental. I had a couple minis frost on me, and that's just like, it's so devastating. It wasn't Legion, it was the one that was like Descent. Is it Imperial Assault? It's been so long. That game came out a long time ago. I did paint some stuff for Legion too, and I did the same thing, but the first time I did it was for the Vader and the Stormtroopers from Imperial Assault. So like the spray can dull coat it can be temperamental. It's really like dependent upon the weather and stuff. So I use brush on, and just in the last like year and a half or so, I mean, I've been painting for probably 30 years off and on, and I just finally like a year and a half ago got a dry brush and started using it mostly for priming, but doing some painting with, not dry brush, airbrush. Doing some painting with it, like learning how to blend and stuff with it, and it's awesome. Like I love my airbrush. And I tried to varnish with that, and it was like, man, it's hard to tell what part of this thing has been hit with the varnish already. So I don't know. I'll probably be super sad one day when I look at one of my minis and I'm like, oh man, some paint chipped off. Why didn't I varnish this one? But sometimes, like I was about to say, I use the brush on stuff. But if you have a lot of stuff to coat, a lot of stuff to varnish or cover or whatever, that can take forever. The brush on stuff. That was probably a way longer answer than you were looking for to a yes or no question. It's not like I obviously have an opinion or anything on it. I love the relaxing nature of this hobby, of the painting part of the hobby. So I live in Northern California now, but before I moved up here, I lived in Southern California. And I had a really cool gaming group down there. It was guys from, they're all from the video game industry, but they do board game designing in their spare time. One of them was Chris Taylor. He probably won't care if I drop his name, but you might not recognize the name, but he designed Nemo's War. That's one that was originally done by, I think it still is, Victory Point Games, but Victory Point Games got bought by somebody, not Asmodee, somebody else. So that's probably his most famous board game, but video game fame, he was the lead designer for Fallout, when Fallout was 1 and 2, before it was stolen and they had the lawsuit with Bethesda and stuff. That really devastated him. That was like his baby, and Bethesda kind of stole it. Anyway, it was a really good gaming group, but we would get together and paint and stuff too on Saturdays. So we would start like at noon and paint, and one of our other friends, He called it our sewing circle because we would sit there for like 5 or 6 hours, paint and just talk about whatever. That guy was he worked at Blizzard. That was a cool place to go. We played in their library sometimes if you uh, to see the inner workings of Blizzard and to see their network monitoring room that would it monitored the status of all the networks that were or all the servers that were running WoW, and Hearthstone had just started. And what's the shooter game? Uh, I can't remember what it's called, but that was cool. That place was awesome. All right, let's do some basing stuff. Bushes, glue. Tufts. Overwatch. There you go. Yeah. They had this library on campus that had like video games and board games, and the employees could just go there and check them out. Or we were there after hours. We would use the tables in the library to play board games and stuff on. I only went there a couple of times, but it was cool. Let's get a couple bushes. Should we do this? Put one back here. Tuck one here in the front. That might be too big. Tuck one up against this rock. Here. Put a grass tuft back here and maybe up here. Do we do a big bush in the back? That one's too big. Little bush back there. Maybe a dark green tuft, light green tuft, light green tuft. Yes. We will do that. I use a couple different kinds of glue, depending upon what I'm doing. I like to use this kindergartner glue, PVA glue, for for these like foamy type of bushes, because it kind of soaks into it and helps keep it on there more. It'll soak into that. It's not foam, it's like the thing you clean dishes with. Sponge, there we go. And you usually don't need to use anything else with you shouldn't have to use anything else with the type of grass tufts that I have. They're supposed to be self-adhesive. I just don't like taking chances, and I will put a little dab of super glue. And that PVA will dry and be clear, so you're not even going to see it. just in case anybody is interested, to do these rocks over here that I've been doing for quite a while for my basing, like to get these kind of rocks and like this one that's on here, and even the ones that like the one that Umbra is standing on back there. It's this soil cover stuff. It's bark pieces that you might have like in your yard or whatever. So Moser Lee soil cover. Interior household plants, and people put it in their gardens and whatnot. So that's just bark. It's lightweight. Doesn't make the miniature too heavy, and after it gets painted, it looks just like a big stone. So I think we'll do one of these. Maybe we'll just do 2 grass tufts. Dark green one over here and a lighter green one over here, and probably call that the end of the tufts. So to help me apply these, I usually use some tweezers to hold on to the tufts. Put a little dab of super glue on it. Just a dab. You do not want this super glue to leak out from underneath this thing, because then it's going to get shiny. You'll have little shiny spots. And you don't want that. You always could cover it up with some varnish. Dull coat. Okay, got a little grass tuft there. And I'm going to go with a lighter one. We got some small ones in here too, some medium-sized ones. Put a medium-sized one on the back there. A little dab. Because super glue is not going to dry transparent like that PVA glue is going to dry. I don't know if this one is in contact enough with the base. That's why it's good to use the PVA glue, because like I was saying, some of it soaks into that sponge material, and then it'll all get hard. You do need to look at these from all sides, like that one was sticking up a little bit. All right. Let's throw a couple little light details on the backpack. I think that's going to be it for this guy. I'm going to let him, I usually like to let him sit for a day or whatever, come back and look and see. Is there anything else I want to highlight or add or whatever? But I'm not, like I said, I'm not going for a huge or an extremely high level of detail on these. Just wanted to sort of match what I've already got for my guys back here. What I think I'm going to do, I think I'm going to paint the inside of this. So I'm going off like this thing's like a little technology panel or some kind of little like pad or communication device or something, some little techie thing. So I'm going to make it look like it has a blue screen, and we'll do like a yellow button and a red button. Just to completely pick arbitrary colors. Small brush here. Okay, got to kind of try to make sure. Now this is where you got to be careful. Little tiny bit of paint. Just fill it in a little bit at a time. It's a little bit more that needs to get put into one of the little corners, and then it will look more square. Bottom needs a little tiny bit. It's amazing how you can see like a tiniest little bit. All right, so now we got like a little blue screen. Oh wait, we don't want a blue screen. We don't want a blue screen of death. Do I even have a bright yellow anymore? Oh yeah, duh. And I'll use my fist on red. These I probably don't even need to put on the palette. Just get that out of the way. Interesting new challenge, painting with camera and a light right in front of your face. Okay. Yellow dot. The tiniest of tinies. Did I even get any? A little bit. Red dot. Oofta. That one was a little more difficult. Let's put a little bit of red on the top of this thing. That looks like a boundary sensor, maybe? Or a trail marker. Just to add another little touch of detail somewhere. Or a touch of color, I guess. I think that's going to be it for this first pass on the Peerless Pathfinder, and I doubt there's going to be a second pass. It looks pretty good to me for a How long has this been? 2 hours? What time is it? 9:07, 2.5 hours. I'll take some pictures and put it up on Discord. Maybe do a video in the round, on the round table thing. And I'll be back Sunday. We'll work on something else on Sunday. Maybe we'll try to get the shaper done. Maybe I should... I'm using the Guardian in my playthrough. I should paint the Guardian. The Guardian's pretty epic, standing up on top of the rock too, with the... I just like the way this came out with this basing. I was like, when I saw this cape, I was like, this needs to be epic, so I want this person to be like, they're up on top of a bunch of rocks, and the wind is just like blowing their... The wind is just blowing their cape. This one will be fun. All right, I think that's going to be it. I'm going to call the stream here, but I will be back on Sunday afternoon, I think is when I scheduled it. I don't know how long that one will go. We might do more than one, just depending upon how things are going. So yeah, hope you guys had fun. Thanks for chatting. Thanks for coming by, Fisher. Saying hi. You guys missed Chub Frog. He was here earlier. I gave him a little bit of hell for giving you a little bit of hell in the questions earlier. Just joking around with him. And I hope you guys had a good recording session. And everybody else that came by. Thanks again, and I'll see you on Sunday.